I want to start tonight by reading an email that I sent to all council members. Dear council person, I'm sending this email as I am extremely concerned about the sustainability of our tax department. Euclid is in the middle of a ton of changes. We have been for many years now. One of the biggest mistakes I think we have made as residents is electing leaders who have never run anything in their life. And that's unfortunate because we need leaders with experience leading. What many of these leaders of the past and some of the present have done in many aspects of our government is outsource, resulting in fees and additional costs to the residents of this community. The duties and responsibilities of running certain sectors of our government. We outsourced our dispatch services because we couldn't effectively manage that. We outsourced the management of Shore because as city leaders, they couldn't manage to rent rooms in a building successfully. We outsourced management of the golf course because our leadership couldn't effectively manage that small business either, just to name a few. Each time it has required additional cost, and in my opinion, hasn't delivered in any of these cases, an adequate return on the people's investment. I'm urging you to do everything in your power to save our tax department. Just because our current administration can't manage our tax department doesn't mean the next administration won't be able to.
You kind of addressed my question in the presentation, but you're not guaranteeing that we're going to collect an extra $1 million if we go with CCA.
Madam Chair, to the council and the finance director, that is a speculative number. As Mr. Ryba indicated, we only can project based on historical trends. We can only anticipate on actual dollars that we see. We cannot assume that there's a pot of gold somewhere, but you'd have to have a couple of Mega Million winners in the city to generate, a few $100,000. So no, I would not use that as a sales pitch. So
I just want to say that it makes sense why the folks on council who are knobs are voting for this, because it doesn't directly impact your residents. They can afford to do whatever they need to do.
So my question to the administration is, this $1 million, is this a cumulative thing since the FTI regulations were passed in 2008? Or is this $1 million a year that we haven't capitalized on from 2008 going forward? Does somebody have that information?
Madam Chair, to the councilman, RITA having asked RITA that exact question, the answer is that would be an additional annual $1 million+.
So I stand here tonight in unity with the majority of all of your constituents against this haste move to RITA, which dismantles yet another superior service in our community. I've watched, mainly from the sidelines outside of this email, the way that you've handled all of this, with hopes that those of you who are for this legislation would somehow miraculously be reminded of why the voters in your respective wards sent you here in the first place. Unfortunately for the good folks of Euclid, that has not been the case. So I've been tossing to and fro for the last few nights as to what I can do to help the good folks of Euclid. Initiate recall efforts against Brian Moore with all my might and with the backing of former Ward 2 supporters of his, or initiate a referendum petition. We have decided to do both. Enough is enough.
So, Madam Chair, my first concern is that we've lost all this money over 10 years, potentially. The second is, well, that's probably not really happening because of the state tape. So we have access to what the state is looking for because they have the incentive to find revenue that's due to them, and then they pass that tape along to us. Is that not true? Am I misunderstanding that?
Madam Chair,
Mr. Kaplik have that wrong?
As I said, the CCA referred to the state database as the bread and butter of their delinquency program. The federal database is the bread and butter of their delinquency program. So the answer to that question would be no.
Well, CCA also said that they didn't think that there was a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, which kind of lets me favor them more because it seems like they're being more honest with us. There's no guarantee that we're going to collect an extra $1 million, an extra $1.5 million, correct?
Madam Chair, the councilman, that is correct.
Carefully, ladies and gentlemen, the mayor's comments, if you rewind 15 years ago, that's what was said about setting up our tax department. The exact same arguments. We're in a tough budget situation. We have to bring in more revenue. Bringing this service in-house would be the way to go. Now, on the issue of fairness, I opposed that. I thought it was a bad idea because of the projected costs. But it passed, and I was proven wrong. If you look at back then, the revenue that was brought in the full year of in-house collections, our revenue was up by $2 million. It doesn't add up. There are other discordant elements to this whole debate also. You know, it's pretty clear that when we first discussed bringing in RITA, that the administration had their minds pretty well made up. I say that because I asked about, well, did you talk to CCA? If you're going to do or have an objective process, they both should have been brought in early on, and they were not. They were brought in after the fact, and I have the emails where CCA says, well, we met with the administration and they're set on going with RITA. Our tax department, and by the way, Mr. Kaplik, kudos to you. You have guts. Our own tax administrator, who's been here a very long time, so most of us know him, has told us that the state tape reflects what comes from FTI. It's filtered out because the state has every interest in the world, ladies and gentlemen, of getting all the revenue that's due to them. Do you think they're going to short themselves by not looking at that federal tax information? Of course they do. They send it on to us. So the amount that's due us is closer to $9 to $10 million. Is the administration prepared to state in writing and in public that, and I'll be fair, within 20%, that you're going to collect that amount of money by switching to RITA?
We can't guarantee that. We made our recommendation based on the data we've received and verified from other communities that they have increased their collections. There is no guarantee. A major employer could leave and we would lose that revenue. It's difficult to compare, year to year. The indication from all communities, the research that we've done shows we will have an increase in tax collection.
Madam Chair, that tells me
there's
clearly
no guarantee.
That tells me clearly that there's backtracking from the December 12th meeting, because it was stated very clearly when I asked the question, that much money is sitting out there and FTI will be the leverage to get it. That's not true, and I agree with that. I don't think you can make that kind of claim. But if you can't make that kind of claim, I can't support this. You can't just switch on maybes and possibilities, not without a much deeper analysis of what these other communities are doing.
Well, it happens all the time. People move to Ohio, they make it to their first tax season, eventually find themselves asking, who is RITA? Hundreds of communities use RITA, but you won't find many who value that service.
I said that question when I moved here. It is so unpopular. In fact, a couple of people in Euclid are taking on City Hall to try and keep RITA out of town.
We need to keep the tax department in-house. It's less expensive, it employs Euclid workers, and it'll offer us better service.
Jeff Beck and Marcus Epps started this petition shortly after the Euclid City Council voted 5-4 to allow RITA to collect taxes for the city. That vote caused most of the people in the audience to turn their backs to the council in disappointment. Beck and Epps aren't going quietly.
I went down to the Board of Elections and I initiated a referendum petition, which will halt this process for 30 days.
If they get the signatures they need, the people will vote on RITA in November, potentially overruling the council.
Halt this process and give the voters a say in November from this podium, from this